One on the East Coast. How's everybody doing? What's up, Robbie? How are you this morning?
George, I'm doing great, man. How you doing, Doc?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. We got a good one today. The title for today's podcast is Some Things Aren't Meant to Be Caged.
Hey, right. All right. So listen, it's a poem that's out right now, and it reads like this. Some birds aren't meant to be caged. That's all. The feathers are too bright. The songs are too sweet and wild. So you let them go, or when you open the cage to feed them, they somehow fly out past you. And the part of you that knows it was wrong to imprison them in the first place rejoices. But still, the place where you live is that much more drab and empty. They got out, got free. So, George, my question to you is when you hear the poem, so many things run through your mind, right? So, what comes to your mind? Matter of fact, in the audience right now, those of you that are listening right now, I want you to also post what comes to your mind. If you're out there and you're active and you're listening to this thing, post what comes to your mind. But George, tell me, what comes to your mind when you hear this, man? When some bird you hear some things aren't meant to be caged. Tell me what comes to your mind.
Yeah, so lots of things, but I think with us, we are the bird, we are the cage, and we are also the person that's opening the door.
Yeah.
With the bird, I mean, when you look at natural design, the bird was supposed to fly, it was supposed to, be in the air, the sky, and go out and, build nests and do some of those things and so forth. And I think when you look at us, we have some of that natural design that we ourselves put ourselves in a cage, or the part of ourselves that's supposed to be out and wild and free. And then there's also the side of us that's responsible that we can rely on to open the cage. So there's different aspects of this. And one of the things I like most, and I come back to it a lot, is a quote by Jordan Peterson. And Joe Rogan hits on this a lot, is most people think that you should be weak. Most people think you should be docile and passive, avoid conflict, and all these other things. And Jordan Peterson says, well, no, you should be a monster. You should be a savage. You should have this thing about you that people look at you and kind of respect it and maybe even fear it a little bit and want to turn the other way. But then you shouldn't be controlled by it.
100%.
To tap in to controlling that monster. And kind of the quote that describes that is, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in war. Because you exactly, yeah.
I love it.
We have this nature about us that things are going to get bad at some point in our lives. Somebody will die. Somebody will get hurt. Somebody will need to be defended. Somebody will need things that unfortunately are part of our lives, kind of that conflict, some of these other things. And it's better to be a warrior in a garden to ascribe to peace. But if things do go bad, it's better to have that ability to be a warrior and not be that gardener at war, so to speak.
So it's kind of like, and when I contextualize this thing, I look at something I've told my sons. You've heard me say it before. Be that person that creates the crowd. Don't follow the crowd. Be that person that creates the crowd. And part of the mindset behind it is a resistance. It's a resistance to following the community of the world that wants to stay in one lockstep. It wants everybody to think a certain way, believe a certain way. It's kind of like I was watching a basketball game. I was watching the Golden State Warriors in their championship run, and I was watching Looney, and he grabbed the ball, he grabbed his pass, and he turned, and his elbow went over the top of his defender. And so some of the commentators were saying, oh, that could be a flagrant foul because the defender did a flop. He pretended they got hit in the mouth. And so they start replaying the video of this incident. So clearly his elbow went above over his head. So many different angles. You can see it clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly the commentators were reinforcing what they wanted us to see, right, and what they wanted us to believe. And I believe that this is sort of a metaphor of life in a sense. This is how we're living in the world that we live in. We see, we understand, we actually have the ability to interpret, but we choose to stay caged. We choose to stay in the word that's been so fashionable for the last 10 to 15 years, stay in this community, because there's a great sense of a need for belonging and being a part of, instead of that uniqueness, that beauty, that genius that we used to years ago really push to make sure that people had this expression in their lives, that their creative genius could come out and they could be this person once they sourced their own identity code. And so even back in that day, we used to ask children in elementary school. I remember being asked in elementary school, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Mm-hmm.
Some of that was partially defined by the wishes of our parents, right? And then as we grew, because we were in lockstep with our identity code, we understood what it meant to try to find ourselves, and then try to find everything that was necessary, the language behind it, the knowledge behind it, the research behind it over time to become this thing. We knew how to source that out. Nowadays, that almost seems like it's been stripped, but there is a movement afloat, because I see a lot of creative genius happening all the time. Even if you look at the way businesses are flowing, there's a lot of creative genius, but still this community has this mindset to keep people locked in, caged in, and that puts a damper on and puts a shelf on the beauty and the full out expression of what people can be. I got some other munchables, but I want you to jump back in there for a few minutes.
One of the things that stood out was, Mark Jackson's response to some of the fouls, or Van Gundy. Like, they're an authority figure on the television. Like, they're
100%.
the certified, sports expert.
Sure.
And it's one of those things that comes to mind is how people respond to authority, and then how people are autonomous. How do they lead themselves, or are they waiting for someone to tell them what to do? And that's the difference between the savage will mentality and, everyone else.
100%. So in savage will, part of the mentality is this: write this down, become the master of your destiny. Just write it down. This is huge. Ron Willingham has this in a book called The 10 Laws of Wealth and Abundance. And inside of that, one of the number one thing that he reminds people to do is to become the master of their identity. And so there are 5 ways that you can master your identity. I actually call it 6. First, you got to begin with the end in mind. So set your identity code, set your identity meter, begin with the end in mind. What do you want to be? There's a price that has to be paid to get there. Don't exhaust yourself on the price, but see the end and then start working backwards. So write it down. Number 2, take full responsibility for your actions and your reactions. Stop blaming everybody and stop huddling up in the community where you can hide out. So if something doesn't work, you can blame someone for it. Number 3, guard your physical and your mental health and your well-being. Guard your physical and your mental health and your well-being. You're responsible for that. Don't give that to your spouse. Don't give that to your significant other. Don't give that to your children. Don't give that to somebody's response code to you. You're responsible for that. Number 4, set goals for yourself and offer yourself some incentives for completing your goals. Hey, I got some goals. I got my goal board sitting right over here, right? And one of my goals is 8 pounds off my chest, 8 pounds off my back, 8 pounds off my waist and lower back, off my buttocks, off my thighs, and my hips, 8 pounds, right? And when I accomplish those 8 pounds, what I'm going to do as part of my offering to myself, I'm going to give away all of these suits that I had made, and I'm going to buy me another wardrobe that's going to be simplistic and necessary for the time that I'm living in. And I'm excited about giving away, and I'm excited about buying. And then the final thing is continue to learn even after you finished with school. George, we talked about this, 15 minutes a day on a book. So right now I'm at 15, I'm spending an hour, right? And it's a broken hour. Sometimes I spend 30 minutes, but I got 15 minutes a day for 4 books. So an hour, the reason why I'm working out of an hour, because our whole mental unit of measure is based on an hour code. And so knowing that it's based on that, our interruption, that's why we're doing this 11 minute on an 11 hour segment, is to interrupt that, because I found that every 11th verse in the scriptures, when you read the scriptures, it completes a thought and it starts a new thought process. Interruption.
Mm-hmm.
It's a master number. It
That's right.
transforms. And I saw in the TED Talks, they have an interruption, 15 minutes, and then they've completed their whole thought process. Let's be an interruption. You can play that music, man. We dovetail it out, man.
Mm-hmm.
Seek advice when necessary, but we got to get this thing unraveled, man. Unravel your perspective. That's unmunchable. Unravel your perspective and become godlike, omniscient, omnificent, omnipotent, omnipresent, and omnidirectional. We can do this thing, man. Savage will, baby. We all about it. Talk to me, George. Bring it somewhere, baby. We got to close it.
And you said it right there. That was
it. So look, guys, we appreciate you all, man. It's 11:11, and we appreciate you being here. Listen, subscribe to Savage Will. Get 3 other people to do the same. Join us next week. Talk to you.
We're out.